you said you want to be in control, right? You want to make sure these things are like you give power to the people. And I did it and it backfired me. How do you explain that to a leader?
You need to link it with performance. The leader themselves is willing to be vulnerable. And that takes a lot of courage for a leader to do. You know, we're talking about collaboration, right? So you can't have collaboration when you're commanding and controlling. You want people in your team who know more than you about certain things. You know, that's showing your strength as a leader, isn't it?
Yes.
And when you talk about performance, that means you need to talk about accountability. So making sure that people in the team know what the team exists for. People are then choosing to be accountable.
One of my favorite author, Yuval Noah Harari, he wrote this book called Sapiens. He said that collaboration in a large number is what exactly differentiates us from other species that exist there. Homo sapiens, which is basically humans, it's our ability to work together as a team. If people doesn't understand that, if people doesn't want to learn to work as a team, you will always be someone who miss certain opportunities, and you have to learn how to do that. So we often say, like, you know, learning how to work with other people, it's often like how you criticize, how you give feedback, how you compliment someone. You're a fun person to be around. So the way you put it is like all those things are very important, but if the environment is unsafe, it will not happen.
That's right.
Hi guys, welcome to Living in Control podcast. I am your host, Reza Abraham. I'm the author and the co-founder of the In Control Group, an organization with a mission to help others to be in control of their life and their careers. We imagine a world in which most people are in control of their life, a conscious life accompanied by conversion, contentment, and consistency. So in today's podcast, we're going to talk about another pillar in living an in control life called collaboration, the ability to boost the spirit of togetherness and inclusion by thinking and acting as a team. Okay, guys, today on our podcast, we have a remarkable guest, a very, very good friend of mine, who I'm not only knowing him in person, but also we have done some work together. He's someone who I look up to in my professional work as a consultant. He's one of the world-renowned experts in the area of psychological safety, empowering teams to support the business with new capabilities, giving you more control, improved teamwork. If someone knows how a team works, he's the guy. He's tuning in from Melbourne, Australia. Let us welcome the CEO of Human Capital Realization, Dr. Peter Brace. Thank you so much for being with us, Peter.
Hi, Reza. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Really appreciate that. It's great to be talking to you again.
My pleasure. You know,
I
really mean
book.
it.
I loved your book. I must say that I've read it cover to cover and really enjoyed it. So I hope it has great success, and a lot of other people read it too.
Oh, that's so nice of you. So you're so kind. You're always so kind. So yeah, Peter, tell us a little bit about yourself. And for some of our audience who may never actually heard of the word called psychological safety, what is it and how you define it for us?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been working in the corporate field for a long time as a consultant. I worked in sales, project management, various leadership positions. But about 12 years ago, I started a business with another guy. We focused on human resources and the people in organizations and how we could help them to work more effectively. And then a couple of years ago, I discovered this term, psychological safety. And I was intrigued by it. One of your C's is curiosity. I was very curious about that, and I had to look into it. And I had no idea what it meant, but as soon as someone explained it to me, I knew immediately, because it's something that we all experience in the workplace. And as I learned more about it, I realized that this is something that kind of brings together all the stuff that I've learned about and have been interested in for decades. So I was really pleased to learn about it. And I'll tell you what it means for those of our listeners who don't know. It's basically, it's a quality of teams. And it's when we feel safe enough in a team to be able to be ourselves, to be able to take interpersonal risks, and to be able to especially collaborate together, but also to be able to even challenge the way that the team does things. So it's really it's a feeling that emerges from the way that the individuals are in the team and the way that the team works together. You know, it's not something that you can just put into a team. You can't upload a sense of psychological safety in a team. It emerges when the right conditions are created. And it's very, very powerful, because when you have psychological safety in a team, almost inevitably the performance of that team will improve. And it applies across all kinds of teams, all kinds of industries. Any team that you could name, if it's psychologically safe, it's going to do better.
Yep. That's really amazing. You know, I mean, I personally, when I first heard about this, the whole concept of psychological safety and the work that you have done around this area, I think we all know about. I mean, I'm not sure whether everyone has heard about this, but I first learned about this whole concept of building trust, building transparency, building teamwork, and I was very familiar with the work of this professor by the name of Geert Hofstede, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. So Prof. Geert, actually, he's the guy who talked about power distance for the first time. You know, he basically nailed the idea of like power distance. And when I got introduced to the work of like your work around psychological safety and so on, it was amazing to understand like how sometimes we are thinking that, oh, it doesn't happen in my culture, it doesn't happen in our organization, it doesn't happen in our industry. But then when you were sharing about psychological safety, I was like, my God, it's happening everywhere. And sometimes people just don't know it's happening, right? Yeah. Have you ever came across like anywhere that it doesn't exist there? Have you ever seen that?
And I talk about teams here. You know, a team is a group of people that's come together for a particular purpose. That to me is the definition of a team. And every team has a certain level of psychological safety. It could be very high, which is great, or it could be very low. And it is related to the performance of the team, but not necessarily. You can have a team that's really high in psychological safety. So everyone feels free to speak their mind. They can be themselves at work. They can challenge the way the team does things. They can be innovative. But performance may be low, right? So that means that, you know, everyone's having a great time, but not much is getting done.
Yes.
Or it can be the other way, where performance is really high and everybody's really stressed then because they're getting a lot done, but they don't feel safe to take any interpersonal risks in that team. And that's not going to be sustainable because, you know, people can't continue to work under stress that continues and endures.
Yeah. That's exactly like a similar way that even we teach in when I talk about the whole in control, right? We always tell people that, yes, you are in control. It means that you are taking responsibility for something that you can control, and we're not going to apologize or use it as an apology for something that you can't control. Right. But control doesn't mean that, you know, okay, so you're just free to do whatever you want. Right.
Yeah, true.
So we also, I believe that there are similar thoughts when it comes to the psychological safety as well, meaning that we are not here talking about like, okay, you just say whatever you want. And then, you know, as long as because we want you to feel safe, you know, but it has to be some form of like measurement there, right? So how do you control this psychological safety so that it won't go like out of line and people take advantage of it?
Yeah, good question. And first question is, can you measure it? Well, there are many different ways that you can measure it, but generally you're going to get a feeling about it first, right? When you observe that team or you're part of that team, you'll get a feeling about psychological safety. You might not know that's what it's called, but you will see whether people are willing to speak up, for example.
Yeah.
So a lot of leaders say, my people never come to me with any ideas. I really need innovation, but they won't tell me anything that they don't know I'm already going to agree with, right? That's a great sign that psychological safety is low. People don't want to take a risk of offending the leader, so it's much safer to say nothing. So where's innovation then, right? You can't have it if there's no psychological safety, because no one wants to take a risk.
Yep. Yes, please.
And then, as psychological safety rises, people feel that they can speak up more. They feel they can bring their unique personality and experience to that team and share their ideas. But there has to be some context around this, right?
Correct.
I mean, you don't want to, in a psychologically safe team, you need to be free to challenge the leader and say, I don't think this is right, what we're doing, or, I really believe there is a better way. But you have to consider the context. You don't want to correct or suggest something to your boss in front of their boss, right? That could be embarrassing, particularly in what you mentioned, a high power distance culture where hierarchy is really important.
Yes.
It would probably work well in Europe. Austria, for example, has the lowest power distance in the world, so everyone feels kind of equal there. But Malaysia has one of the highest. So hierarchy is really important, and respect is really important. So we always say psychological safety needs to take into account the culture of the team and where it exists too.
Yeah, that's true. So now you have connected for us the psychological safety with the power distance. Yeah. So you mentioned that, yes, it's important sometimes to speak up, but you also need to be mindful of the culture that you are living in, and But we don't want to use it as an apology. At the same time, saying that, hey, you know what, I would love to do that, but I don't want to do it because I'm just respecting the culture. I'm just trying to just like, cover myself and making sure that my boss is not going to take it on me and so on. So you counter offer that by saying that, hey, you must, let's say, provide feedback. You must highlight what you think. But perhaps you also want to be mindful that you're not doing it in front of your boss, right? So how people know this? Like what in your work, like where have you seen these things actually has gone out of context? It means that people misuse the whole concept of psychological safety. Is there anywhere that you have seen, like, people basically, they say like, this is something that I have experienced this. Somebody say like, yeah, but you said you want to be in control, right? You want to make sure these things are like, you give power to the people. And I did it and it backfired me. So how do you explain that to a leader?
Yeah, well, the other part of this is you need to link it with performance too, right? So leaders can create the conditions for psychological safety to emerge, and one of those conditions is that the leader themselves is willing to be vulnerable and say, in this situation, I don't know, I'm not sure what to do here. I haven't encountered this before, and that takes a lot of courage for a leader to do, because most leaders operate on the model of command and control. Right.
Yeah.
So that's two C's that aren't really in your book, we're talking about collaboration, right? So you can't have collaboration when you're commanding and controlling.
Yep.
And if you're commanding and controlling, that means you've got to know more than everyone else in the team knows. And again, that's not sustainable in today's world, right? You want people in your team who know more than you about certain things. That's showing your strength as a leader, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really true. Yeah.
And when you talk about performance, that means you need to talk about accountability. So making sure that people in the team know what the team exists for. Why do we have this team? What are we contributing to the broader organization? And what is that organization contributing to the world? That way people say, okay, I know what I'm doing here and I know why I'm doing it. That way, again, you're not commanding and controlling. People are then choosing to be accountable.
Yep.
They're making their own choice about taking on accountability.
Yep.
And that's going to happen anyway, right? Whatever people say, if someone says to you, yes, boss, as soon as you leave the room, they can do something else, right? I mean, you've been involved in change projects where organizations are trying to change, and what happens? You tell the people in the front line what to do, but they're going to, in the end, do what they want to do.
Yep.
So people need to choose that accountability for themselves, and if the organization is psychologically safe, you can have those open discussions about why am I doing this, and what is the point of this, and everyone should be open and transparent about that.
Yeah. So the few things that just now you mentioned, and I was like just reflecting and resonating when you were talking about it. So one of them was the whole notion that you explained, like the purpose that the teams are working on it, right? And this is one of the part that I spoke about it in the book as well. One of the most important way that we can actually get a team to work together very well is when everyone get their why, their how, and their what right and in order. When people have the same thought, when they have like the same purpose, they often work together. It's like the example is when it is as simple as an husband and wife. When they have like different goals in life, they cross one another, and that's where all the arguments and conflicts comes in. So the best way to do it, when they meet, for example, a therapist, right? The therapist will always tell them, like, get your goals in order so that you guys would not what we call cross each other all the time. So that was very interesting that you mentioned as well. And then the second point that I like the fact that you highlighted is about performance. We are empowering people to be in control. We want them to feel psychological safety. But at the end of the day, none of us here working for God's sake. We need to show performance. And that is very, very important. Even the cat doesn't catch the mouse for God's sake, right? We all want to see some result. Yes, it's nice to be a nice person. Yes, it's nice to empower people to be in control. But at the end of the day, we got to make sure you show me the results, right? It has to be some form of like KPI there, right?
That's right.
Does psychological safety connect to the KPI as well?
Yes, it does. And it connects in a way that is not really immediately obvious. As the team feels safe to to be vulnerable and to suggest different ways of doing things and to bring their real self to work in that team, that team becomes more engaged, right? The people in that team become more engaged, right? Most organizations measure employee engagement, and they believe that drives everything, right?
Yes.
But psychological safety actually drives employee engagement. That is the leading indicator of engagement. And when you have employees that are engaged, they're far more likely to be productive and to perform. And in addition,
let me get this right now.
Sure.
So you said that psychological safety drive employee engagement. Okay, can you unpack this one for our audience? Because I think this is one of the common questions that even I get all the time when we talk about psychological safety. People say, "Oh, these two are the same." Yeah. So how do you put these two in order and together?
Yeah. So if you feel psychologically safe in that team, right, you're going to feel like you belong to that team. That's the very basic level of psychological safety in a group, is that you feel that you belong, you're included in that group. And that's the same as engagement, pretty much, right? And that is the base level of psychological safety. That's the lowest possible level. Once you pass that threshold of inclusion or belonging, then you're on the way to good psychological safety. But that's kind of the bottom rung of the ladder. So if you're engaged, that's just the beginning. You not only need to be engaged, you need to feel free to contribute, that you can actually bring something to that team and that your contribution matters. That's the next level up. And being engaged is not the same as feeling safe to learn, right? Learning is an inherently risky process. Whenever we learn something new, we always feel a bit confused, right? When I teach students about psychological safety or any topic, I always tell them, welcome that feeling of confusion, because that indicates that you're outside of your comfort zone, which means that you're actually starting to learn something, right? But you need to feel safe to do that, right? You've got a job and you know exactly how to do it and how to do it well. If you start to do it in a new way, you might not do it so well to begin with. And so that's scary. You need to know that your teammates and your boss are going to support you in that process. So, then you're on the next rung of starting to, feel safe enough to learn, and you're bringing yourself to work, your whole self, your personality, your unique attributes and history. You start to bring those into your work. The example I love to use is the employee who's living with a disability. All right. An employee like that is most likely to feel they don't really belong, not really part of the team. Right. But as soon as they do feel part of the team, the disabled are the most innovative people in our society, because every day they need to find a way to navigate the world in an innovative way. And so they can bring that sense of innovation into their job. Wow. Now you've got a team that's really starting to fire up, because you've got diverse viewpoints coming together. But not only that, the diverse members of the team feel like they're included and they belong, and they're safe enough to bring their perspective to what the team does. It's no wonder that performance is positively linked to psychological safety.
That's quite interesting. I think one of the things that you're highlighting, and I like the connection, is so you're saying that psychological safety has a direct correlation with the performance of someone. Yeah. So when someone is feeling safe, they feel like I want to contribute more, right? And it drives the performance. So this is something that, the very same school of thought exists about employee engagement. They say engaged employee generally, they will contribute more, right, to a company and so on. But I also have seen the other side of it too. We have worked with organizations that generally they're not very engaged, but then in terms of performance, they're doing very well. And I also have seen organizations that they are they show very high level of engagement, but then at the end of the day, the performance is like very bad. Yeah.
Yes.
So, does psychological safety got anything to do with this, this connection between, I mean, is there any way to answer this, that yes, your people are engaged or disengaged, but that's not the only factor in performance?
Yeah, absolutely. Now you think about a scenario where the team comes to work, they're full of great ideas. They feel that they can share those ideas with one another. They feel safe enough to learn. They feel safe enough to contribute and challenge the work of the team. But what is it they're supposed to do? If they don't have a clear picture of what their accountabilities are, there's no way their performance can be good.
Yep.
There's no way their performance can improve if they don't know what they're supposed to be doing.
Yep.
So if there's confusion about the goals of the team and the accountabilities of the members, then no matter how psychologically safe or engaged the team is, you can't get great performance. True. And without engagement, you can have great performance. Without psychological safety, you can have great performance because you've got a leader there who's cracking the whip.
Oh, yeah.
And basically telling everyone what to do. But people will burn out and you won't get new ideas. You won't get engagement. And, that high performance is not going to last.
Sure. When you were just explaining about the psychological safety, and you addressed the point of like how you learn something, and then are you innovating or not? Are you taking risk or not? It also reminded me of the work of Carol Dweck, the growth mindset. Yeah. Because there are quite a lot of like similarity. I think it's aligned with what you're saying, where you're talking about those people who has a fixed mindset and those people who have a growth mindset. So people with a growth mindset, they're always like very open to change, innovation, learning, and they believe that intelligence is something that it can be developed, right? The fixed mindset people, they're always thinking like intelligence is something that is born with you. Either you are intelligent or you're not. And then even if you put a lot of effort, it doesn't mean that you will change, because if you need to put a lot of effort to learn something, hey, you know what? Maybe you're not talented in that area. So that's how the fixed mindset people think. And I felt like the explanation that just now you gave about psychological safety, it also have some relationship with the mindset of the people and the leaders as well. Does it?
It does.
Is there any relationship? Have you seen any work on that area?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the growth mindset is really fundamental to improvement in a team. All right. So if there is no sense that you can grow and improve, then people may feel safe to learn, but they won't bother to learn. Right. There's no reason for them to learn because they have this fixed view of what they can do.
Yeah.
So the Carol Dweck's work really goes hand in hand with psychological safety, and I believe it's foundational to performance. It's like you can have psychological safety without a growth mindset.
Yes.
But if you have a growth mindset, psychological safety can activate that. It's a bit like diversity. A bit like diversity in a team, right? You can have diversity, and that's just a number, But if you activate that with psychological safety, then you have inclusion, then you have belonging, then you have innovation. So, these things on their own, diversity, growth mindset, are of limited value in a team unless you have that psychological safety too.
Yep. I think there's the same thing that also we explain in growth mindset. They say especially when people and the leader, they do have a growth mindset. So whenever they see like someone who is not like them, meaning that they're coming from the different race, they're coming from different religion, different maybe country or anything something like that. So there is this stereotyping people. They say that, oh yeah, so if you're female, you're not good at this. If you're male, you're not good at this, right? So people with a growth mindset, usually they don't think like that. But people with a fixed mindset, they always try to stereotype people, tell them like, okay, so you are like this because of that. Yeah. So it's the same things about like, so you create the unsafety in the team as well. People feel like, oh, okay, so if you're thinking of me like that, then why do I need to even talk? So they just keep quiet and they don't even get involved in the process. That's pretty interesting. So I want to ask you this one. When someone working in a company, so let's say, okay, today I'm working in this organization. So how do I know that the level of psychological safety is low here? And what can I do about it as an individual contributor? So let's say I'm someone who is an individual contributor in an organization. And how do I know, number one, that there is a psychological safety issue here? And what can I do about it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best ways to observe this is in meetings. And there's a measure called share of voice.
Okay.
You've heard of this. This is about measuring, and we do it instinctively. We'll measure how much the leader talks versus how much the other members of the team talk, right? And if you see a big difference between the amount that the leader talks and the amount that the members of the team talk, there's probably low psychological safety, right? And it's probably indicating it's a command and control type of mindset rather than one of collaboration. And that's instinctively, when you walk into a meeting like that, okay, this is a leader who wants to tell people what to do.
Yeah.
And people are reluctant in that kind of atmosphere to speak up with an idea, and certainly will not speak up with an idea that goes against the leader of that group. So, if you're a member of that team, what can you do? That's quite tricky, because the leader has an outside influence on the level of psychological safety in the group.
Outside influence, or what do you mean by that?
So in other words, the leader has more influence than anybody else on the level of psychological safety. So their level is much bigger than their level of influence is much bigger than the individual team members. But as a team member, you can be more inclusive to your fellow team members there. You can make sure you listen to them, that you show respect to them, whatever their position in the group, see what you can learn from them. And you can model this to the leader. You can say, I didn't know what to do, and I asked, Joe here, he had a great idea. Is it okay if we do that? And not to challenge the leader in a situation where psychological safety is low, but try and start bringing them some ideas. I understand that, you might not want to do this, but if you do, I'd be happy to help. So you kind of present it in terms that are very supportive of the leader, particularly showing how ideas relate to the performance requirements of the group, because that's what the leader is accountable for. They're accountable for the performance of the group. And if you can present an idea to them in terms that will help that, you're going to get a better chance of perhaps starting to turn around their attitude from a command and control to more of a collaboration.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because this is exactly what I also share with the people when I personally get the same questions. Like, especially it's quite often for us to hear that when we go for training, people always say like, oh, Reza, I think my boss needs to attend this training. I think we should stop the class and ask our bosses to sit for this class. And how I put it is that you owe it to that boss and you owe it to that organization to provide feedback. And I like the way you put it. You put it in a very gentle way of like modeling the boss and providing some form of like, you don't want to be harsh. You don't want to maybe do it even directly in front of the person, which I always tell people, if you want to provide any form of criticism to someone, you always make sure you do it in private. You know, you do it one-on-one, and no one else is involved, because you don't want to trigger the ego of your superior, right? And now you're talking about like not only a normal superior, you're talking with the team with a low level of psychological safety. So now it could even be worse, right?
Yes.
So that's something very interesting. So you can still provide the feedback to the superior. It's just, I think if I want to summarize your words here, is that ignoring is not an option.
Yeah.
Because when you ignore, nothing changes.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it means that you are kind of like embracing that, hey, it's okay to be like this.
Yeah.
And you know what? I just want to get my salary, so I don't care. So I just stay here and I let you be in command and control. And that is, I think, it's a very bad way. And that is something that I often talk about, this two idea of like respect and control, respect and honoring.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, the day that you can't honor your superior, it means that you go in front of them, you say something, you go behind their back, they say something else, you know, or you tell them like, I agree with you, but then you walk out of the room and say, well, that was total nonsense, I disagree with this, right?
Yeah.
That's the day that it's best for you to leave that organization.
Yes.
So don't stay and complain, don't stay and blame, don't stay and gossip or backbiting. That is definitely not an option. So ignoring is not an option.
That's true.
It's very, very interesting. So, but let's turn the ball around. So let's say, how about a leader who is having these problems? You know, I've met people like this as well. They would say like, you know, so Reza, I would like to do this, but then you know what? My people just doesn't talk. You know, I ask them a questions and they just like look at me like, and I'm like, okay, so might as well I just give the answer, make everyone's life easier, so you can just go back and answer your emails or whatever. Yeah. So how do you explain the other side of it?
Yeah, and that what you say is really common, particularly in the high power distance cultures across the Asia Pacific region, right? Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, places like that. It's because the culture is such that someone who's higher than you in the hierarchy, the level of respect you have to show to them based on your culture is a very high level of respect. And I always think, in a way, that's really positive, right? Because it applies in the family as well, right? Mm-hmm. So older relatives get more respect than they would in other countries where power distance is lower. That's a good thing, right? In the family, you know, an older brother or sister can be respected. All right. Again, it's a positive aspect of that culture, and we don't want to change that. But the way the leader can honor that part of the culture as well is by, you know, not inviting a direct comment or challenge. They can ask for that indirectly, right? So if you as a leader send out an agenda for a meeting first, you could invite people then to email you some ideas, some suggestions about these topics, and say, you know, I'm not going to say who this came from unless you want me to. I'll just introduce this as an idea, and you know, we can talk about it. So that way, just getting people used to thinking for themselves and expressing that.
Okay.
And another way you can do that is you can assign somebody in the meeting and say, look, you know, Reza, this week I want you to find something you can disagree with, right? And next week,
again. What was the last part? Yeah.
Find something to disagree with in what we're talking about. It's your job to disagree, right? Next week, it's going to be David's job, right? So you know, we're not making you into the disagreeable person, right? The one who always has something to say against the idea. We just want to give everyone a turn to see what they can find from a different perspective.
Why do you do that?
So that way the leader is actually assigning the dissent to someone in the team. So it's kind of like giving them a license to disagree. All right, saying, okay, this week, your job, and I want you to do it really well, is to find a problem with our plan.
It's like a black hat of what we call that in a creative thinking, Edward de Bono.
Exactly. It's similar to those different hats idea, right? But you're not waiting for someone to be brave enough
to do that.
Find an idea. You're actually saying, I want you to do that today.
Okay. I think I got the idea. The idea is basically for the leaders to become vulnerable.
Exactly.
And allowing people to disagree with me or find a problem in something. So you are kind of like intentionally you're formulating that environment that, hey, disagreement is fine. Have I get you correctly?
That's right. Exactly. All right. Because you cannot change the psychological safety of a team in one meeting, or in 1 week or in 1 month,
Yeah.
It's there are norms in the team. There's a way of doing things that are probably the same in the company, the same in the culture. And you're trying to do things a little bit differently.
That was a very cool idea to do that. And I like the first one that also you put up. So the second idea was something that, assigning someone to be a disagreeable person or like highlighting what's the problem. So your intention is to create that vulnerability that is okay to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
I think there is a similar work also that I have seen from Patrick Lencioni, where he talked about the 5 dysfunction of the team. So one of the ways to build that up is to assign somebody that you say like, okay, so in the next meeting, why not you be the chair? You would be the person actually who run the show and tell everyone what needs to be done. So it's kind of like, it's a form of like an empowerment to that person. So the leaders, in a long term, they can build this environment that it's okay to be wrong. It's not always my job to tell everyone what needs to be done. And so you're creating that form of like psychological safety there, right? So it's a similar work.
Yeah, and even a more subtle way is, you can give out a different colored card to people, and no one knows what color everyone else has. But the guy who has the black card, he's the one that has to disagree, and no one knows he has that card. But again, you're kind of showing that this can be done safely.
Sure,
right? It's possible to do this, and not only is it safe, but you'll actually be commended for doing it.
Yeah, that's great. So to wrap up this session, the last questions I want to ask you, Peter, is that, so how do we increase psychological safety in virtual environment? So that is something that currently, like a lot of people are moving to new norms. People are still going back to offices, but at the same time, still like, some people, they're kind of like, in a hybrid model. So what advice would you give to those people?
Well, it's really the same, right? Because you're still having a meeting there, you're still having a conversation, and the leader can still be vulnerable and say, I don't know, or, does someone have a better idea? And you can still follow exactly the same processes. And in some cases, it's easier for people to speak up in that virtual environment because they don't have the boss right in front of them, and they may feel a little more secure if you can establish the ground rules that it's okay to disagree with me. It's okay to come up with an idea that's not already been talked about and approved, and again, that could work better. Some people might feel more comfortable putting an idea in the chat rather than actually saying it. You see that in meetings a lot, don't you? People don't want to talk, but they will put a comment in the chat. And again, that's a way to start normalizing the raising of ideas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I have also observed that, like, sometimes people may not be able to talk about it. Maybe they're not really good at communication when it comes to like face to face, and they would rather basically to just in a very subtle way put it in the chat box. So that's kind of interesting as well. They can help. Any other tips?
That's a real good point that you mentioned, that the ideas will tend to come from the people who are most outspoken, most vocal, most extroverted, dominant, right? And you want the ideas from everyone. The quiet person who thinks a lot before they speak. You want to make sure they have the time to talk about it, so the leader can ask, I know you have a unique perspective because of your experience doing X, Y, Z, do you have an idea about this? And then just wait and give the person time to think about it and express themselves. But I think I missed your question there.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Is what we call it is that at the end of the day, I think the ultimate goal is something that we all need to learn to work as a team. This is one of my favorite author, Yuval Noah Harari. He wrote this book called *Sapiens*. I'm sure you're familiar with the work of him.
Yeah.
And he said that collaboration, especially collaboration in a large number, is what exactly differentiates us from other species that exist there. So Homo sapiens, which is basically humans, it's our ability to work together as a team. And if people doesn't understand that, if people doesn't want to learn to work as a team, you will always be kind of like someone who missed certain opportunities, and you have to learn how to do that. So we often say, like, learning how to work with other people, it's often like how you criticize, how you give feedback, how you basically, like, compliment someone. You're a fun person to be around. So the way you put it is like all those things are very important, but if the environment is unsafe, it will not happen.
That's right.
Exactly. So that's why I really like the putting out this idea of like psychological safety for everyone to understand exactly. This sits basically at the heart of building a great team, because without it, I think you can be very engaged, but if you feel unsafe, it's definitely you're not going to achieve your highest potential.
Exactly right. Yeah.
So, Peter, where can our people find you? Where are the places that they can find about your work and all?
Oh, I think the best place is to go to LinkedIn. Just search for Peter Brace on LinkedIn.
You're very active in LinkedIn, yeah.
Try to be very active on LinkedIn. This is a subject I care a lot about. You talked about people who just come to work and do their job. To me, we should get joy in our work, right? We should have the opportunity to learn and to grow, right? We should be linked to a sense of purpose in our work, and psychological safety helps you achieve all those things. So really, that's kind of my mission, is to improve the workplace for as many people as possible. And I think this is a great way to do it. So
beautiful. Thank you for the work that you're doing, guys. So I hope every one of you have enjoyed this conversation that I have with Peter. We hope this conversation has inspired you to know more and learn more with us. And a reminder to everyone to always live an in control life. It's where you love what you do, you love who you do it with, you love who you do it for, and you love how you do it. So please tune in our next podcast. And as always, we love to have you around. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Peter, for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.